Good evening, I'm Brittany Ramsey. Thanks very much for joining us. We begin tonight with the area's COVID-19 numbers. The district health unit is reporting its second highest daily case count since the pandemic began. There are 24 new COVID-19 cases today, but most of them are associated with ongoing outbreaks. 11 cases come from the Ballard East-West Thai work camp near Marathon, where 16 employees have now contracted the virus. Another 5 come from the district jail, bringing the total case count there to 24. And there are also 2 new cases at the Correctional Center on Highway 61. In all, 13 of today's cases come from the Thunder Bay area. Aside from the outbreaks, 5 new infections are from close contact and 1 comes from travel outside of northwestern Ontario. That brings the total case count in the district to 756. 92 are considered active. That's the most since Christmas Eve. There are still 3 COVID patients in hospital. 1 is in the ICU. There's good news and bad news in the latest provincial numbers. Ontario is reporting 1,913 new cases today. That's down substantially from almost 2,600 yesterday. But the report comes with an advisory that technical issues have led to underreporting of the numbers from the Toronto area. Meanwhile, Premier Ford is trying to head off a looming crisis in hospitals. He wants to establish 2 more field hospitals in areas that are seeing ballooning hospitalizations, and he wants the federal government to pay for them. Colin DeMello has more.
In emergency rooms in the hardest hit areas of the province, frontline physicians are overwhelmed.
What we're seeing right now are people who are really, really sick. I'm resuscitating in the emergency department more patients than I ever have in my entire career.
Hospitals in some regions are at the brink, with more than 1,600 people hospitalized due to COVID-19 and 400 people in intensive care.
I don't think that we've reached our peak yet. Perhaps in a couple of weeks we'll be on a downturn, which would be great. But right now, unfortunately, I think we're still going up, and it's quite worrisome.
Now, the Ford government is turning to the federal government for help to deal with the healthcare crisis. The province will officially ask for assistance in setting up 2 federal field hospitals to create more critical care space in Ontario.
There is definitely a desire to set up 2 additional hospitals to prepare for any additional capacity we need if the COVID numbers continue to rise.
Ontario already has 4 field hospitals in Burlington, Barrie, London, and Ottawa, where patients are sent to recover, freeing up space inside the hospital itself. Critics are questioning why the request is coming now, months into the second wave.
It should have been weeks ago that those field hospitals were already ready because, we knew back in November what the projections were going to be for January and February, and the government just dragged its feet.
The government says the work has been ongoing.
I don't want people to think that we have not been planning. We've been tracking and monitoring the numbers in our hospital sector, and particularly and most acutely related to ICU units.
It is a race against the COVID clock now before hospitals are forced to make impossible decisions.
The national president for Unifor is warning that time is running out for the Bombardier plant in Thunder Bay. Jerry Dias feels the plant should be running at full steam rather than struggling on life support. And he says federal and provincial politicians need to take immediate action to secure new orders.
I've had extensive conversations with both the federal and provincial government, and both of them are saying that the money is there, but where is it? If they're both saying to me they understand the importance and they're committed to it, and the money has been allocated, well, then where is it? I can't understand this for the life of me.
Dias voiced his concerns in a recent op-ed published in the Toronto Star. The City of Toronto has already set aside money to buy 60 streetcars and is prepared to purchase 420 subway cars if government funding comes through. French-based company Alstom is set to take over the assets of Bombardier's transportation division on January 29th. Dias worries a lack of orders for the local plant could be a factor if Alstom is looking to reduce capacity. He says the threat of a permanent closure has never been more real and would lead to a huge economic fallout for Thunder Bay.
So this is 1,000 jobs in Thunder Bay. This is the big song in Thunder Bay. I mean, the economy is depending on this, and people better understand that this is long past the discussion stage. They better get at it, or there's going to be a huge economic penalty to pay.
Last year, around 550 workers at the plant were laid off, and just over 400 people are currently employed there. Meanwhile, plans to build a new $50 million police headquarters will remain on hold. Members of the Thunder Bay Police Services Board voted today to defer their decision on the issue until late April. Also on the agenda today was the yearly update on the 44 recommendations submitted by the Office of Independent Police Review in 2018. Troy Charles has details.
The recommendation regarding the new headquarters asked for the board to support the inclusion of $6.1 million for land acquisition and construction costs of $55.9 million for the potential new building. The board's newest member, Michael Powers, says there is a need for more engagement with city councillors and the community before passing a motion that would then go before council. Also presented today was a progress report on the 44 recommendations handed out by the Office of the Independent Police Review in 2018. That original 300-plus page report detailed failings on the part of the Thunder Bay Police Service to address the policing needs of Indigenous people in the community. Power says he was impressed by the progress made on many of the 44 recommendations, but also has some ideas on how to improve matters.
So an opportunity again to perhaps bring this from a written report to a scorecard, one that can then be shared with our Indigenous leaders and community, where we can get into more significant conversation about what has been done as a result of implementation, what needs to be done, and improve, I guess, the level of understanding, awareness, and orientation.
Lastly, the board were updated by Superintendent Dan Taddeo on the procurement of in-car and body-worn camera systems. The service is implementing a plan to acquire 130 body cameras for officers. It's part of a deal reached with Axon Public Safety Canada to update the service's digital evidence management system.
And I'm happy to say that this is a legacy shift for us. It's a legacy shift for policing in Ontario from other police services. And we're pretty excited to highlight to the board at some point once we start implementing this digital evidence platform. And then, of course, with the body-worn cameras and in-car cameras.
Taddeo hopes to have the new system functioning by this fall, but says it's all COVID dependent. Troy Charles, TBT News.
City Council has started debating the proposed 2021 city budget, and already there's some good news for taxpayers. The first of 4 meetings to review the document line by line got underway at 5 o'clock this evening. Even before that meeting began, more than $300,000 in savings was announced. It comes from lower than estimated insurance premiums and interest rates. The final Thunder Bay DSAB budget came in a bit lower than anticipated as well. Thunder Bay also experienced more growth to its tax base in 2020 than initially thought. These changes reduced the proposed total tax levy increase to 1.99% and 1.76% after growth. Those numbers will likely continue to change throughout the budget process until the document is ratified next month. The Northern Policy Institute is examining a new model it hopes will make Northern Ontario more self-sufficient when it comes to goods and services. The model for a so-called Northern Ontario circular economy was discussed today during an online symposium. There was a range of speakers, including those in the mining sector to researchers and professors. A more circular economy in Northern Ontario would revolve around cohesive action between industry and government. It would involve areas that would further support growth, create more jobs, while also become its own supply chain. NBI President Charles Sirtwell says there are still untapped resources in the area and more work and awareness is required to reap the benefits.
This is a huge economic opportunity for areas like Northern Ontario. And so in addition to taking a serious look at our regulatory environment, taking a serious look at how well we're doing in terms of communicating with each other about what exactly are the waste products that we can offer to others, there's still a lot of that public engagement and public education that has to happen.
A similar symposium will be offered in June, further focused on Northwestern Ontario and small businesses. And relatively few changes are being reported as Lakehead Public Schools close their latest transfer window between in-person and online schooling. The deadline for both elementary and secondary school students to apply for a switch was last Friday. For the younger grades, the transfers resulted in a wash. About 80 students switched from virtual to in-class learning and vice versa. On the secondary school level, 84 chose to opt for virtual learning, with just 32 wanting to return to the classroom. That's a gain of 52 in online schooling.
I think we're seeing an increase of students going into virtual at the secondary level, most likely during this quad because we've moved to the hybrid model that we've discussed previously, which means that students most often can keep their timetable at secondary and they are going to be joining their classrooms via virtual means, but the teacher will at the same time be teaching students face-to-face.
The changes will be made February 1st, coinciding with the board's switch to the hybrid learning in elementary schools. The Lakehead board will have one more opt-out period before the school year comes to a close. A Lakehead University professor and her team in the psychology department have conducted some promising research for an app called Joy Pop, which focuses on promoting resilience among youth. The app was created in Southern Ontario, but it's based off a 28-day study conducted on LU undergraduate students by Dr. Aislinn Mushquash and her research team. The app has several features, including links to mental health phone lines, calming activities, and breathing exercises that are intended to generate positive coping skills. With over $14,000 in funding from local foundations and the community, Mushquash says they're proud to collaborate with Children's Center Thunder Bay and Delico to help increase mental health support.
With our research and sort of the implementation into some of these organizations, we are fortunate to be able to provide it to youth at no cost to them. With the funding from the Thunder Bay Community Foundation and their generous donors. And I think that's what we'll be looking to do in the future, especially if we have ongoing partnerships with the organizations. We want to ensure that if this is being used by youth within the organizations, that it's accessible to all, that sort of financial constraints, socioeconomic status is not a barrier to being able to access this intervention.
The app is currently available to purchase on the iOS App Store, but Mushquash is hoping to roll out a free model for local clients in the near future. As you might expect, organizers of the Thunder Bay Blues Festival say the event is not likely to make a return to the city's waterfront this coming summer. The 2019 Blues Fest set record attendance numbers, but the 2020 event was canceled even before the pandemic hit due to problems booking top-level performers. Community Auditorium Marketing Manager Trevor Hertig says they haven't completely ruled it out, but he says the further we get into 2021, the less likely it is for anything big to happen at Marina Park this summer, as public gatherings are extremely limited. Their first priority would be to reopen the auditorium once it's safe to do so, but he says music acts are becoming less and less interested in booking shows for 2021 and are instead penciling in dates for 2022.
Really be disappointing. 2019 was a great show. Trevor puts on an unbelievable